readers. So research is a huge, important fact whenever you're doing your stories.
Yeah, definitely. You've got to weave the storyline throughout some reality to make it believable, and also to really tell that story better. When you're talking about the actual physical places that you're investigating and the tools that you're using, these electronic devices or whatever, you better know what you're talking about when you do that.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Is that hard for you to do when you get into the details of the technical aspects of investigations? Were you well versed in all of that, or did you kind of have to do some more research on how to handle these, electronic devices and everything that they bring into the field?
I had, being on that investigation was helpful, and I was able to really pick the brains of the team that I was with on what they do and how they do it and how it works and what it means. And as well as, a lot of the shows that I watched are very informative, and doing any kind of other research in books, just really knowing, the subject matter and making sure, when you put it in there, and when you're describing certain situations, you're not really describing it as a fact. You're just kind of weaving it in, as you said, to make it understand and believable, and put it in dialogue is usually how I do it, where you have someone talking and explaining what this particular piece of equipment does and how it works, and people's responses to it and so forth. So that's been very helpful to me, and it was kind of natural because it was such a fascination and a love of mine and an interest. It made it easier for me to write about.
And I'll bet you've got the techie guy doing that explanation in your stories, right?
Yep, you usually have Harry that's going into the details of things and making sure that everybody's following things to the letter. It's kind of a funny twist, and the way I kind of liken him to, if you've ever watched Big Bang Theory and Sheldon, he's kind of monotone, and doesn't have any sense of humor, and it kind of goes over his head, but when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, you want Harry there beside you.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I like Sheldon's figure or character. It's wonderful. Yeah. Oh, I could see him part of your team. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. So, how, you write these books. You are able to get the story told, and then comes the publication part, which seems to be one of those stumbling blocks for many creative people. We have the ability to sit down and tell a story, and we seem to do that well. But then comes like the business part of the whole thing. So how do you handle that?
Well, what I did in the beginning was, editing is extremely important. And I learned the editing process in a lot of the course taking that I had. And you've got to edit it to an inch of its life, to the point where you're ready to pull all your hair out. Then you have to walk away from it for a while, and then you come back and you edit it again. And
I like that term, edit it to the inch of its life. I like that.
That's right. Yeah, you got to do it. It's vitally important. But then, and at the time when I started out, I didn't have a whole ton of money to be sending it off to editors. You can use groups. You can have people help you with that have maybe some experience in it. I caution that at times, because you really maybe want somebody to do nothing but just grammatical. You don't want anyone to change your voice, because we writers hold these stories very, very near and dear to our hearts, and you don't want anybody changing your voice whenever it comes to, storytelling. But it is important to get it edited. You can use Grammarly. There's pros and cons on that out there, but I find that's very helpful, as well as sending it off to a professional editor. You really need to have that done well, because, again, you'll lose a reader. They won't consider you very credible when it comes to that. It's easy to tell a story in your writing, and sometimes we write the way we talk, but that isn't necessarily how it needs to be written. So it's a tricky process, So that's just important to get it edited well. And then my first Sullivan Secret back in 2011, I had a small press. I submitted it, and somebody picked it up at that time and had it published for me. And it did okay for a while, but I soon discovered that, I was marketing it pretty much on my own, and I took it over and self-published it at the time through CreateSpace, which is for the printed version of the books. CreateSpace has now merged with Kindle Direct Publishing, so everything goes through that platform now. There are other Smashwords, there are other platforms, Barnes & Noble, that you can use, but my process has been through Amazon, through Kindle, and I just was able to get them out there, self-publishing. You have a format. I'm on the computer all the time, so I had the ability to get it into the ebook version that it needed to be. I sort of created my own covers at the time, but then in 2014, I had an indie publisher pick me up, and they went out and did professional covers. And I highly suggest that, without a doubt. If there's nothing that you do, make sure that you get your covers professionally done, because that is key. That's basically the type of thing that somebody looks at that and entices them to pick your book up at least and to be interested in it. But after that, after a while, I chose to take all the books back. And at that time, I had 5 books with that publisher. And still, I was marketing on my own and found that I was able to work just as hard, and I liked the control of self-publishing. So I took them all back and put them back up on Amazon myself, and added a 5th book in the series, and that's where I'm at right now.
A 5th book or a 6th book?
I have, right now in the series, I have 5 books.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. And now you mentioned something I think is very important. The idea that people do judge a book by its cover, right?
Yes, they do. They really do. There are tons of places out there that you can go to. I mean, all you really have to do is do a search on the Internet, and you can find some very affordable places. They're not that crazily expensive, and they are professional designers, and some are pre-made that you can choose whatever you like, or you can have somebody design it from scratch from something that maybe you have a vision for that you like, and it's worthwhile having it done professionally.
Yeah. Did you notice then, by the way, once you went that direction, that your books garnered a lot more attention at that point? They
did. The sales really picked up tremendously on that fact. It was kind of surprising, and so did the reviews. That's important too for any writer to get your reviews out there. So
right.
It's a long process. It's very you have to have patience, because I know in the beginning what drove me crazy and what ended up putting me to writing the how-to guide that I wrote was my frustration, because I was working without a whole lot of money to be able to go out and send it off to somebody to do completely, doing it all on my own. And a lot of times there was, in the beginning back then, there wasn't a whole lot of compassion for people that were self-publishing. It was kind of a dirty word back whenever I was starting to do it. So trying to get somebody to market your book or getting it on a website that would market, they would once, they wanted at least 5-star reviews. And if you got a new book out there and you can't get it marketed because you don't have any reviews, but you're trying to get reviews, so it was kind of like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? It was a tough process for me that I finally decided to do my how-to book that literally walks people through step-by-step from beginning to end on getting your book published.
Well, let's start getting into the nuts and bolts of that. That sounds fascinating. So you've written the how-to book, and first of all, tell the folks the title and how they could actually get a copy of this.
It's called A Complete How-To Guide for Rookie Writers, and it's basically, I did screenshots because what frustrated me the most whenever I would search for a way to do something, you're new, you're trying to figure it out, say, like a book trailer. They would say, you need to do a book trailer. This is a great way to, get sales and to market it and give a quick synopsis. And, so it was, how do you do this? I didn't have a clue. You'd go out to a website and they would talk, and then they wanted to sell you something. And that kind of drove me crazy because it didn't really show me exactly what to do. So I learned it on my own and basically then chose to create screenshots of the process of each step-by-step of how to create a book trailer. I shared, if folks want to do traditional publishing and want to go after the traditional publisher, I have query letters, examples of those, queries of samples of doing a synopsis, a cover letter, how to go after an agent or a publisher. There's different ways of going out and finding those for whatever genre you're writing in. Also, ebook conversion. There's any number of things, the marketing to going out and contacting your local newspaper, going to your local library, getting your books in libraries. There were just so many avenues that I was learning all on my own that I thought, you know what, I wanted to create this book to make it a little easier on the next person coming through, because I figure knowledge is power, and I wanted to share that because it took me a long time to get to that point. But I think it's important that we all share what we know. So that was what basically brought that book to published.
Well, I think that is just the perfect time to come out with a book exactly like you've written, because the traditional publishing companies out there are just let's face it, they're having a hard time themselves because people don't buy books like they used to. So it's very difficult to get yourself an agent, very difficult to get yourself a publisher at this point of the game. So people are turning to their own devices and creating their own stories and own publications from scratch. But like you said, they'll just spend days and months and maybe even years trying to figure it out so they can go to get your book and cut to the bottom line really quickly here. How can people get your book? Is it on Amazon and all that kind of stuff as well?
Yes, it is. It's on Amazon, Kindle and paperback, whatever you choose, whatever preference you like. That one, I do run specials at times. I run it on sale, and I usually on my website I like to promote that and let people know that when I drop the Kindle price down. Right now it's $5.99, and I'll sometimes run a special on that for $2.99 to help folks out. And people can always reach out to me with any questions that they have. If they want to go out to my website at rookiewritersolutions.com and reach out to me. I love helping other people getting into the writing. It's always fun to help somebody out, and when you see somebody have that aha moment or they're able to get their book published, it's a great feeling.
Oh, that is really sterling of you to be able to